Do you like Touhou? Do you like sprite-based JRPGs? Do you like randomly game overing from the beginning of a fight?
Death! You want it? It's yours, my friend!
Well then sit back and enjoy my review of Touhou Soujinengi, The Genius of Sappheiros. Weekend? Let's get into the meat of it by spoiling the story. Kinda. I'm not going to just jump in, but skip to the next stage if you don't want to hear any of the story, not that it's any different from a traditional Touhou game. First off, let me say that Genius of Sappheiros has 3 versions of the game. There is the base game Genius of Sappheiros, the expansion known as Lingering Summer Heat, and Weekend. The footage you'll be seeing throughout the entire video is from Weekend. To simplify what Weekend is, it's like what Skyrim 10th Anniversary Edition is to base Skyrim. It includes the expansion and has various other changes. Those changes being some difficulty reduction from the base game and its expansion, as well as a few other non-noticeable changes. If you want to read about them, you can find all the info on this game on its dedicated Touhou wiki page. I also want to say that some of this footage I will be borrowing from Magiftw. He makes a lot of Touhou lore and content to digest from, so go check out his channel if you're interested at all in Touhou. He's been on a 6-month hiatus at the time of recording this script, so hopefully he comes back and makes some more videos. But back to the story. The story follows the same plot as almost every Touhou game in existence. Reimu is chilling at her shrine when suddenly a mist follows a scorching summer heat. A mist, where have we heard that one before? But this mist is only affecting yokai in Gensokyo, including our resident Kappa, who is suffering the most thanks to this mist. Reimu, with the strongest weapon used across all her games, her intuition, she decides to not investigate and leave it at that. End of review. That is, until the main protag shows up to tell Reimu to get her ass in gear and fix this shit. After a small group pep talk, Reimu, Sanai, and Marissa, and Aya, make their way across Gensokyo, recruiting more Touhous as they go. Every time a staple Touhou appears, a cutscene plays showing the interaction between the party and the Touhou fated to lose and the incident at hand. Most of these cutscenes devolve into the party bickering with one another and Reimu saying, "Shut up," and "I'm gonna kick your ass." After Reimu and friends are done torturing the rest of the cast, they eventually find some clues that lead them into the Forest of Magic for a second time, where they find a lake-bed temple, and inside this temple are the 3 Gorgon sisters, which are the ones responsible for the incident. Reimu kicks their asses and then proceeds to let them live peacefully in Gensokyo. The story is best enjoyed through in-game dialogue, so it's about as much story as I will cover. The expansion, on the other hand, is just what you expect out of a AAA RPG. There's lots more characters to recruit, items to get, stages to explore, and even more secrets. Now, I know what you're thinking. Just kidding, I don't. I'm not Satori, but I do believe it's important to cover characters for this review. I'll keep this stage very short, so here's the TLDR. In Touhou fashion, all the characters are incredibly well represented, from Alice's unhealthy obsession with Marissa, to Satori reading people's minds and exposing them when the time seems right. One of my favorite things to see in this game was the party walking up to the boss stage, and some verbal fight breaks out, like how Komachi is lazy as shit, and then the defensive comments that ensue right after. It makes for a very sought after break from the constant mob fights you have in each dungeon, so think of it as like a little reward in addition to clearing the stage. Now this is the real review of Genius of Sappheiros. The whole reason I've been writing this script and making this review is because the world simply needs to know how complex the game gets in terms of its gameplay. Where to begin? The game has some familiar RPG elements such as your attack, defense, speed, and its magic-based counterparts, but it also takes every mechanic used in battle and dials it up a couple notches. Let's begin with everyone's favorite kind of spell, status effects. If you've played Final Fantasy VII and beat that game, then I know you didn't use a single goddamn status inflicting spell, because let's face it, they suck. They rarely hit your opponents, every boss is usually resistant to every status effect in the game, unless it's a developer oversight. Not in the genus of Sappheiros though. Every boss, and even normal trash mobs, have ailment and elemental weaknesses and strengths. Without spoiling much, there is a boss in the middle of the game that can actually be controlled and then told to flee from the battle. And while that's probably the best use of status elements I've seen in a boss fight, every boss in the game can usually be poisoned or debuffed as well. I should also mention that status effects in the game do not transcend battles, so your poison debuff will clear itself after winning the battle. Let's talk about the next set of spells, the spell cards. It's not a Touhou game without them. Every character obviously has a set of abilities that they can use in combat. These skills either unlock as a level up, or they come from skill growths, more on that feature later. But what's really interesting about spell cards, which you can see by the little red card behind the icons, is that they share a cooldown depending on the CD of the last spell card used. For example, if you use a 2 CD spell card, you gotta wait 2 turns before being able to use another spell card ability. You use a 4 CD spell card, you gotta wait 4 turns. Turns. So forth and so on. A character like Patchy, who has a ton of abilities and spell cards, suffers when she's equipped with only spell cards. She might be able to do more damage with that one spell card than any other character, but then she's forced to wait until that card's respective cooldown has passed. That's why it's important to have a balance of spell card and non-spell card abilities. The game has spell cards, but did you know the game also has lives and bombs? Before answering that question, let me tell you that this game does not have any kind of currency, nor does it have healing or replenishing items of any kind. Your inventory consists of only your gear and materials to make said gear. The only shop to exist is Corando. Here you can bring materials and Renosuke will craft gear for you. And in order to get recipes, conditions have to be fulfilled and then the party must talk to Akio by going to her house on the overworld map. These conditions vary greatly from clearing the fabled Endurance dungeon after Lingering Summer Heat's final boss, to picking up a brand new party member. If Satori could read your mind, then you'd be thinking, how the hell do I heal and fill up before fights then? Well, your HP is always capped off at the beginning of an encounter. This is assuming your character has lives to spare. If a character runs out of lives in a dungeon, they stay down until you walk into a magic circle that refills your lives, MP, and bombs. MP does not recover after each battle like HP, and there's not much to do about that. There are some skills and passives that grant MP regeneration or absorption, but they're not really reliable. Moving on to the bombs are used as ammo for spell card and non-spell card abilities. The cost can be seen on the icon of the ability shown by these little stars. Aside from having a very Touhou-esque battle mechanic, the game also features a skill tree system with reallocatable points, which the game refers to as simply growth. Every character has at least 14 categories to dump points into. Every character also has at least 5 unique and personal categories, one of those 5 being their exclusive weapon, 4 being general buffs related to the character, 3 for generic weapons, and 6 for each main stat and attribute. The growth system plays a huge role in how your party fights. To use the Girl of Shade and Knowledge as an example again, Patchy has a category that affects her physical attack, making her one of the most deadly physical damage dealers at the beginning of the game. Next mechanic is short. All characters have a limit break of sorts with the most random activation chance. There's no condition to fulfill or meter to build up, it's quite literally random how often it can activate in a single battle. I haven't covered elements yet, and that's because elemental magic does more than expose weaknesses and strengths. The type of elemental magic you use has an effect on the battlefield known as the land system. There are more than 6 elements, but these are the 6 main ones that affect the land system. Water versus fire, earth versus lightning, and light versus dark. Whenever an elemental spell is cast, this bar here fills up depending on the strength of the attack, and when the bar is full and the icon is pulsating, it means that a specific element will deal bonus damage and the opposite element will deal less damage. Our guinea pig Patchy has the ability to control the effect of the land, in case you were wondering. Finally, there's one more thing to cover. Nothing new to RPGs, but I added it last on the script, so here we are. The last thing is formations, and holy heck, there are a lot of formations. Formations will affect how some attacks hit and miss party members. And I forgot to mention that not every attack is just an AoE or a single target attack. There are line beams that go up and down, sideways, and there's even some spherical attacks that, depending on the formation, can hit everyone or a single person. But the fun thing about formations is that they also affect your stats, ranging from bonus damage under physical or magic, or there's also speed bonus formations. And my favorite is the Hinatori Sky Dance, which has a super baiting middle position. When you put Alice in this middle position, she will usually not die unless you are really fucking bad at the game. There are a total of 54 formations according to whoever wrote the wiki entry for this game, and some formations are super secretive, and you wouldn't even think to check in these places for their unlocks. Now that I think about it, the last sentence really sums up a majority of the late game and 100% completion if you're really into that. I'm definitely not trying to reach a quota of 6 stages for this review or anything, however I believe this game's artwork quality needs to be appreciated. For starters, every character has their own unique sprites with lots of different expressions. I'm sure you could find a sprite sheet for this game somewhere and it still wouldn't hold out every single animation. Speaking of animation, every weapon in the game features its own unique sprite and animations, from Nitori's Glock, to her Beretta sniper rifle, to Patch's Animicon books, to Yugi's throwable Suika weapon? What is this, Super Mario RPG? And that's just the weapons. Every character also has their abilities and spell cards based on their original Touhou spell cards, name it all. Each party member also has a unique background for the ability wheel slider thingamabob you see in combat. And to finish this stage off, let's call back that title, specifically the direction part. Whenever a character interacts, there's specific emotions or movements they perform that add to the conversation as opposed to just having characters face each other, talk, and react within text boxes. It makes the overall atmosphere of the conversations very similar to the Touhou printworks. The only assets that you can really say are reused are going to be the enemies, but let's be real, in a game with about 150 hours worth of content, there's going to be a lot of palette swaps, and the devs looked like they tried to change the models around a little bit, but overall it's inevitable. Boy oh boy, where do I even begin with this one? It's at the end for a reason, and not really the reason you might all be thinking. As someone who was introduced to Touhou through the music, specifically that one song about the apple, this game's soundtrack is okay at best. Not any tracks stood out in particular to me, most of them fall under generic RPG themes, and while they're not memorable, they're also not annoying. However, they do tend to get repetitive. There's no Final Fantasy fanfare, or even, the one track that almost every Final Fantasy game gets right, battle theme. I can even name themes from various RPGs that really left an impression on me, like the Culex battle theme from Super Mario RPG, Serpent Devouring the Horizon from Bravely Default, and even a theme like Genova AC from Final Fantasy VII. But this game doesn't have a single one like that. The best you get is a remix of a theme while you're in the respective stage. For example, the first level, Scarlet Devil Mansion, features embodiment of Scarlet Devil's Stage 4 theme, Viola? Wall? The Magic Library? Sufficient to say that even though Touhou is known for its music, this game unfortunately underperforms relative to all Touhou games and most fan games. But at least the developers are making a game with gameplay in mind, and not making a game so that they can use it as a medium to sell music. Looking at you, Zun. I've played a handful of Touhou fan games and even the main games, but none have captivated me or even kept me playing for more than 20 hours total. The only other game that comes close is that one Pokemon Touhou fan game for PC that you guys should also check out. Genius of Sappheiros does exactly what you would expect out of an RPG and then proceeds to dump it in a vat of Touhou juices, which makes for an incredibly long and hard, but most importantly, dopamine-enriched adventure. Any so-called Touhou and RPG fans definitely have to give this game a shot at the very least, and the only reason they should have to complain is because the game is just naturally difficult. Overall, this game gives off a great impression that the developers knew what kind of material they were working with and then managed to make a turn-based RPG off of it. If I recall, there's a JoJo's Bizarre Adventure game that did something similar but flopped hard. And it was probably because they didn't look into how to apply stands as a battle mechanic like how the Touhou girls pulled off spell cards. And how Nitori managed to make an M2 Browning machine gun. If you made it to the extra stage, I want to say thanks for watching the whole video. This is my first review that I've ever done, and honestly I actually made some mistakes that I'm going to cover up real quick before I get to the sappy shit. I forgot to mention that the game came out in 2010. I think that's pretty important. And the weekend version came out 2 years after that, so 2012. Currently the game has 3 ports in Japan on the PlayStation Vita, PlayStation Store, and Nintendo Switch eShop. In America, it's not on the eShop, so really the only way Americans and English speakers can play it is on the PC version. Which I will leave a link to Moriya Shrine if you want to go borrow it from the internet. Overall, I'm not good with scripts. I say a lot, and I honestly had to do like 15 retakes for almost every single stage. They were all recorded independently, and I had to re-record multiple times for each of them. I'm really bad at this, but we'll see. Maybe I can get better. I was also doing this while I was sick and whatnot, so yeah, maybe that was another reason, but regardless, I got the video out, and I had a lot of fun making it, so maybe here's to more. If not, it's whatever. So thanks for watching, and hopefully you try out the game.